So it is official, the Arrowverse is getting a Superman-related spin-off called Superman and Lois, which will be about Clark Kent and Lois Lane being parents and taking care of their son, John Kent. It's kind of crazy this is happening. This is something that's been speculated hundreds and hundreds of times over the last year or two. There were so many rumors about a spin-off coming down the line. I think the rumors started when we found out that Superman was going to be in Elseworlds, and considering Elseworlds definitely set up a Superman show in a big way with the reveal of Lois Lane, the revelation that the two of them are going to have a child together, and that Superman had proposed to Lois. So they set up a lot of material for a TV show, but that was a year ago now, and we had no word. So I, for one, was kind of expecting that maybe this show was dead in the water, maybe it was never even a thing in the first place. And even when we first started hearing about this confirmation, I honestly didn't believe it was real. Because we've been bamboozled so many times with this that I was just like, I'm not going to believe this. But then Tyler Hoechlin and people from the CW started confirming it, and now I'm getting excited. We're getting a Superman show, a new one. Because Smallville is amazing. I love it. Tom Welling is my favourite interpretation of Clark Kent, but it never really got a chance to be a Superman show. So this is kind of our first Superman TV show live action since Lois and Clark in the 90s. So I'm very excited for this, but this brings up so many questions. All we have to go on is that the show will apparently be about Lois and Clark being parents, which will be an interesting kind of thing to do. That's definitely something that will set it apart from any other version of the character that we've had. John Kent is a pretty recent addition to the comics. 5-6 years he's been around, really, so this also kind of lines up with what the Arrowverse is doing now. Characters like Godspeed, the Ninth Circle, all of those that are pretty big parts of the current Arrowverse. Well, they were a pretty big part of our last season, and Godspeed probably will be a pretty big part of the second half of this season, since we have that set up of what the hell is going on with the multiple Godspeeds. They're all also new additions to the comics from Rebirth. So the Arrowverse does have this thing where they really like Leviathan as well. Actually, is something that has only really been delved into in very recent comics, and that's going to be a big part of Supergirl. So the Arrowverse definitely does like to dig into more recent comics a lot of the time, and this lines up with that. It's very interesting kind of thing what to do. This show, I don't know when it's going to come out. I don't think it's going to be a 2020 show. Like it could definitely be a fall 2020 show, kind of like start airing where Batwoman was this year. I don't think that's the case. I think this will probably be a early 2021 show, maybe taking over from Legends of Tomorrow, because I have a feeling Legends of Tomorrow and Black Lightning are both kind of going to be at the end of their ropes at the moment, because I really don't see this many DC shows being on the CW ones, especially since we also have Green Arrow and the Canaries, or whatever that's going to end up being called, coming probably 2020. So I think Superman and Lois will probably be a 13 episode show or a 16 episode show in the back half of next season. It's also going to be interesting if they have this air the same time as Supergirl, because this show and Supergirl, they're going to be very, very, very similar. We're going to have Kryptonians, two shows about Kryptonians, and I could see that to the CW they might not want that much similarity on at once, so they might kind of spread it out. Maybe even Supergirl starts getting shortened down to small 13 episode seasons, and Supergirl airs in the first half of the TV year, so in fall, while Superman airs in the back half. They might do something like that. It's also going to be interesting to see what Crisis kind of says about all of this, because a lot of people know by now, if you don't, Crisis on Infinite Earths basically ends with the destruction of the multiverse, and it ends up with one Earth being left, at least for the next 20 years in comics. I think that's probably what's going to happen in the crossover. I know a lot of people are thinking that they won't have that happen, that there'll still be a couple Earths left, but you just won't be able to travel between them. I don't think that's likely. I think we really are going to get the destruction of everything. So this will be interesting to see what they do, because Supergirl and Flash and Batwoman and the Green Arrow and the Canaries all being on the same Earth does make it a little crowded, but I'm very excited to see what they do. But having a Superman show also be on this Earth will make it really feel like a Justice League-esque kind of thing, where all of these characters are happening once. But it's going to make it, there'll be so many of them that at some point you're going to be kind of thinking, why aren't we seeing a lot of kind of things to do with this in different shows, all that sort of stuff. So for that reason alone, I think it's possible this won't be based on Earth 1. It could be somewhat of a prequel, maybe set at some point. See, I don't know. It doesn't make sense to be prequel either, because John Kent isn't born as of Elseworlds. But I think they're going to find some way to do this so that it isn't conflicting, or that it isn't taking place on the same Earth as Flash and Green Arrow and the Canaries and all of that sort of stuff. In terms of what kind of plot lines they could do in terms of Superman villains, a lot of people are like, oh, well, they can't really do much. Supergirl's taken most Superman villains. That's not true at all. And the villains Supergirl has taken haven't been used that much. The big villains in Supergirl have always been characters that were never too important to Superman, or were always kind of more to do with Supergirl, like the Legion of Superheroes, Lena Luthor, Lillian Luthor, Rain, and the Daxamites. All of those things are never things that have been big characters to Superman. They've always been more central to Supergirl, or they've always just been from more part of her mythos than they have been from Clark's mythos. Now sure, we've had Lex Luthor, we've had Metallo on Supergirl, but Metallo, he wasn't used much. They can totally rework him to work in Superman. And Lex, we know that he has a huge history with the character of Superman, even in this universe, because Superman's been around for like 10 plus years. So there's so much they could do with that. There's also things like the Daily Planet and Perry White and all sorts of stuff like that Supergirl hasn't really touched at all. I think we saw the Daily Planet once in all of Supergirl, so they could definitely do stuff like that. They can bring back Sam Lane and Lucy Lane, who are Lois's sister and Lois's dad, and they could totally bring back them to take part in the show. Mr. Mxyzptlk, who is one of the cooler Superman villains, has only been in Supergirl once. He can definitely be brought back for this. Doomsday hasn't been used at all. Rain is very similar to Smallville's version of Doomsday, but if they wanted to do a really comic book accurate version of Doomsday, then it'll be very different to what Rain was. And then there's so much more they could do as well. They could even do Darkseid and the New Gods, since they've always been very heavily connected to Superman, more so than Supergirl, and more so than any of the other members of the Justice League. And there's also things like Brainiac. Sure, we've had Brainiac 5, we've had little hints about Brainiac on Supergirl, but we haven't had proper Brainiac in this universe yet, and they could totally do that on a Superman show. But yeah, I'm very excited for this. Superman is my all-time favorite comic book character. He's my all-time favorite hero. 7 days of the week I'm wearing something Superman related, whether it be a jumper, Superman pants, or Superman t-shirt. He's a pretty huge staple of what clothes I wear, and I love the character so much. Smallville is so dear to my heart, and I cannot wait to see what they do with this. I feel like we're going to get little hints about what is going to be happening with this show, probably during or at the end of Crisis. I think after Crisis is over, we'll be able to start kind of forming what we think is going to happen on this show. But yeah, what do you think about this? Are you excited? What other Arrowverse spin-offs do you want to see? What characters do you want to see appear in this show? And I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please like, share, subscribe, and all of that, and I hope you have an awesome day.